But it is worth saying that something I was thinking about even during the movie itself. It's an odd idea to build there. We know Deep Space Nine had large impulse engines. We know everything in the Kelvin verse is upscaled, and warp seems to work differently in this alternate timeline. Do you think it's possible Yorktown has limited warp capabilities, meaning she was built somewhere else and moved to this location?
Well, like I said, that's possible if you have some master race that happens to be part of the Federation. We don't know at this point, so anything's possible in that sense. But certainly would have some kind of engines to move around. I never thought that it was. I thought that there would be gigantic sections that would be built elsewhere and brought in. I never thought it would be just like bits and bits and bits, and then it grows into a space station right there. I think they locate a space, they bring these giant sections in, hook them together, like they would make a gigantic oil tanker, and just make these sections separately and then connect them.
Hmm.
But you think no FTL capability in itself takes a bit too far from reality?
I think that you would have these huge towing or pushing ships,
Okay.
instead of having thrusters built into the actual section, because it's not that stuff takes up, you got to have fuel, you've got to have the actual engine. It takes up space, and you connect all that together. You got dead space there, and maybe you could disconnect it or something like that. But I always thought it was something that was pushed or pulled into place.
One of the features of this design that really caught my eye and that I absolutely love is the rivers that have the transparent bottoms so that you can see the ships gliding by underneath. It's a fantastic idea, and personally I would kind of just sit there all day watching them sail past. But what inspired that idea, and was that a last minute thing or something that you kind of planned from the beginning?
Well, that was something that during the development of the tunnels from within, when you're working in 3D CG, and you're dealing with enclosed spaces, especially a tunnel, it's very complicated to light, and it's very easy to overlight, and it's also very easy to underlight. It's hard to get that judgment over a length of a space, of an inside space like a tunnel. So I was working on that, and I put all the lights in, and it was looking okay, but it just looked I get claustrophobic anyway, but it looked claustrophobic even though I knew it was gigantic. And I thought, why don't we have these massive windows on the sides? You can actually see the Enterprise come in from the outside, and you can see the outside action from the inside. And so that was the step one. And then step two was when I started doing my urban planning in plan view from the top of the cities along the arm. I thought, well, you're going to want to have parks and water and lakes and areas, and maybe you want to, God knows, maybe you want to sail or whatever, and boats. I don't know. You could, and so I put those in, and then when I was just looking at stuff like that and underwater stuff, and I saw the caustics, which are the light patterns that you see in the bottom of for example, a swimming pool, as the light passes through the surface of the water and hits the bottom of the pool, you have this beautiful light ripple. It's called caustics, and I thought, well, that would be really cool if you had that in the tunnel. What if we made the bottom of the lakes and the rivers transparent glass with the structure that held it in place, and then again you can look at the city from as you look up, and they can look down at the Enterprise as it's going underneath this water, and you could have. And I said to Justin and the effects guys, you could have the caustics rippling on the surface of the Enterprise as it goes through, which in my mind would have looked really fantastic. And they never did it, unfortunately, but it would have looked really beautiful, because that would have told you exactly what was going on there. Because I've had a number of people have said, so they came up through the water, but was that water underneath in the tunnel? Was the Enterprise in water? No, there's glass at the bottom, but it was never really very, very clear that was glass holding the water in, especially when the Enterprise when the Franklin came up from below. So that was the second thing, and the third thing was I looked at these photographs of the tunnels of the metro of the subway in New York, and they had these shafts of light that were coming down in distance as the traffic came through, it would hit the trains. And I thought, well, there's another justification for opening the top up, and you have these beautiful shafts of light. And I have them in my renderings. I'll have to look at the film again. I think they might have done it a little bit. So those were the three. There's a long answer for something that took a long time to figure out. So it wasn't actually such a long answer, but that was the justification of all that. Opening up the tunnel.
Which is why I want to jump in right at the end there. So in the movie, we also great reasons, by amazing reasons, makes perfect sense. But Kral is able to fly right through the water, as is the Franklin. So how is, you said glass, but they go through and you don't get a real sense in the film that then it all pours down, especially since the Franklin's such a large ship going through the water. Is it a force field? Is it glass? Is it something that is one way, two way? Something they can let it pass through, but I don't know. What was your thought about that?
That was a huge thing for me. And I said that, well, okay, when they come through the glass, and actually do you have the Blu-ray now or DVD of
a digital download? Yeah, we have
right. Yeah, you got a digital download. You can pause it. There's a shot from above looking down at the Franklin as it's wrecked down there by the towers, and you actually see the water rushing in. Now, yeah, where does the water go? That was my big question when we did that. But guys, we have an issue here. The water's going to go down in there, and it's going to be anti-gravity at the other end. And what's going to happen?
Yeah.
And they said, okay, yeah, we'll think about that. That was the last I heard of it. And then when I saw it in the film, I was like, looks cool, but guys, where's the water going?
To be fair, in such a system, I mean, you have fire stopping devices. Why not just have two, suckers either side underneath that when it's since you're right, it's anti-gravity, it then just pulls it in because it's also just floating. So I mean,
have a force field that's a superheated force field that when that kind of happens, it's like sealing a hull breach. It just evaporates the water as it, Who knows? I think a force field would be better than glass, though, personally, to hold the water in. Like sections of force field that you could close off.
Oh, yeah.
You can make translucent or not, depending. That's a whole nother bit of thinking. Cool. So given the variety of... Keep going here, guys. Given the variety of ship classes we see in the Coven timeline, the Enterprise being the largest, bar the remains of a ship we saw in 09, where the Source was actually larger than the Enterprise... Big ship. These entryways into Yorktown, are they all the same size, or are there larger ones to accommodate larger alien craft, which you didn't see, or was it more designed to accommodate the standard set of ocean ships we do see primarily?
Yeah, like where would the Vengeance go in?
Yeah,
because it's huge.
Yeah. With gigantic ships, I always thought that there could be some ports there on the outer shell where the ship doesn't actually go in. It docks on an outer port, and then there's a large shuttle that disconnects from the inside of the shell from the people from that ship, and then just takes them to where they need to go. Because there's going to be a limit, It's like anything. You build something like the Panama Canal. The Panama Canal was built at a certain time, and now the ships are gigantic. They can't fit around the Panama Canal. Through the Panama Canal, they have to go all the way around. So now they're enlarging the Panama Canal to accept these new ships. So it was the same kind of thing back then. Maybe we're at a stage where, in the future, they make another set of arms that are just gigantic. But there's a point where massiveness becomes pointless. It's like, why do you want to bring the ship in? It's a huge thing. What are you going to do? How are you going to turn it around? All this kind of stuff. So it was that kind of deal. So you have all of these you have these doors, the main doors, which are all around the sphere that go into the main arms. And then there are smaller doors that I don't think we even really saw, that are just like service doors where the ships can come in and out. They can come in and out to service the outside of the shell, inside of the shell, and this kind of stuff. So, and even the doors, I had an idea that the gigantic doors could also be this miniature doors within that whole complex. So you don't have to open the main doors for a one-person vehicle. Would be ridiculous, wouldn't it? So, you have different sized doors in that
boggy door.
Yeah.
All right, well, going back to the civilian population and watching that truly superb opening shot of Yorktown, seeing all those multiple layers, all the different gravity planes and buildings, she really is massive and something that truly we have never really seen before. Is this station equipped with just about everything for a modern 23rd century lifestyle? Dozens or hundreds of schools, gyms, gardens, restaurants, and even, dare I say, bowling alleys. As we know, the Constitution class had that. It's very popular in the future. Talk us through, in real terms, what you think is on Yorktown in terms of day-to-day life. Does she have the best Chinese all-you-can-eat buffet this side of the Briar Patch? Come on now.
Well, I think that it's like anything when you're trying to reproduce your own lifestyle. You know, take, for example, I hate to use this as an example, but it's the best example I can think of. A cruise ship. When you go on a cruise ship, they try to... the whole thing is you're trying to up your own lifestyle in a way for a ship floating around an ocean. But, you know, they're going to want to give you the best food and the best whatever, you know, the best experience. And they certainly don't want to make it worse than where you're from. So it should be at least equal to or better than where you're from. Certainly at least equal to. So if you're a Vulcan, you know, you got to have the good Vulcan.
Best plomic soup. Yes.
Yeah. You got to have that lifestyle at least equal to that lifestyle, and so that was my whole thought process on that. I mean, it's duplicating something in motion, and you'll never get it exact, but you can get close to it.
So rather than the external changes for the arms, it's still fair to say there can still be, you know, like you said, sort of Vulcan area and some, you know, if you want to go to shop in the Vulcan and everything's red and
yes.
Vulcan Town.
Yeah.
Yes. But in looking at the concept art you sent us, you designed a variety of buildings. Were any of these influenced by the designs we saw on Earth in Enterprise or in the original series? And how do you try and put yourself into the shoes of a 23rd century architect? I mean, some of those shapes are really fantastic.
Well, thanks, Samuel. The buildings were well. The main brief with the buildings was that I have to be careful because we're shooting in Dubai. And we're shooting a lot of those buildings in Dubai. One of the reasons we went to Dubai is, well, the main reason we went to Dubai is because the buildings are brand new. I mean, most of those buildings are less than 10 years old. Some of the buildings are pretty crazy looking. They don't meet the same kind of, or they don't adhere to the same kind of building standards that we have in the States or in Europe. Not that the building standards are better or worse. It's just different. So you're going to get a different look of a building that you're not going to get here. So that was what they were really going for. And there was so many of them that you can just photograph a lot of them and put them together into a city. So my brief, like I said, was to use some of those directly, which I did, and add some others which were futuristic, but not so much so that they're going to make those buildings look crazy. Because when they shot a lot of stuff in Dubai, and you can't keep adding buildings that I did in the background here and there. It gets very, very expensive, and you know, motion tracking and all this kind of technical stuff. It gets tricky. So I was basically instructed, you know, you do 5 or 6 buildings, and then do Dubai type buildings, and then do one that's crazy, and then, you know, so it was that kind of deal, you know.
Now, is there any other internal details of the design you want to talk about that we actually haven't covered yet?
The main doors that you see in the film they're like 50% of what I designed, and then, I mean, if you see my illustrations, like mine were way more organic. Yeah. And I don't know why they didn't keep that. Everyone seemed to love it, and again, it's one of those things where it gets changed and you're not part of that. So I wish actually that they had kept the more organic look of that, because it was, for one thing, it took me forever to model that thing, and to come up with it. You know, there's one thing you have to, when you're designing stuff, there's one thing is it takes a long time to come up with the thing, and then that no one's really seen before, and then you have to build it and sell it. You know, it's not like in the old days where you spent a lot of time coming up with it, and then you sketch it on paper, and it kind of looks cool. Now they're like, well, let's see it lit, let's see it rotated on, you know, let's move around it so we can see it in 3D. You can't trick them into anything. It's like, it's either going to look good or it's not going to look good. Yeah. So, but I felt that the doors looked pretty good, and they did a pretty nice job of it. I hate is in design is rock and roll truss. A rock and roll truss is like when you go to a rock and roll concert, they have this truss that's holding up the lights, and it's a zigzag. Yeah. And you would never have that in Star Trek. And they had it. And look at the entryway. It's all over the place. Stuart, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yep. Yeah, I do.
Yeah, you would never have that. And it looks like a zipper. So
Yeah.
I was actually shocked. I was like, oh, God, he went there.
Well,
But
that is the next question, though. What did you finally think when you saw Yorktown on the big screen? How close was the final version to your sketches or early CG work? And were there any other tweaks that you could see?
no, I mean, it was pretty close, except for that the thing I was just talking about, the doors, which was still my thing. They just modified it. But, you know, I was very surprised and happy when I saw Yorktown. And, but I'd been living with it, you know, and other people who had never seen it. I mean, when I did it, people really loved it, and it was a great relief that people loved it, obviously. But when I saw it on film, I was like, wow, it looks really great. But people were telling me, because I didn't see the film immediately, I saw it, and people, all they were talking about was Yorktown, and they'd seen it. I've been living with it, but they suddenly saw it, and they were like, holy crap. And I thought, really? Does it look that good? And when I saw it on the film, it's just, you know, you hand your design off and you hand it off to the effects company like DNAG, and they just do this stuff and they light it and they make it look photoreal. It's one of the best feelings for a designer to see your artwork and your designs realized in such an amazing, gigantic way. It's very, very rewarding. It's hard to describe, and I'm glad it worked out the way it did.
Well, one thing that we've actually kind of missed, and I want to go back to, was it always in your mind to have the outer shell be transparent?
Yes, it was always a transparent shell, and it was tricky because it was like, you know, is it faceted? Is it round? But yeah, it was faceted, and as I said, you can't have glass that big. And so we basically made it so when you were far back, you don't see the window frames or the mullions, but when you get closer, you see this little. I think it ended up. We started with the classic hexagonal grid, and then it ended up being a hexagonal grid within a triangular grid, and just to mix it up a bit. But it gets tricky, that kind of stuff. It looked good though. They did a good job.
But talk us through, we've sort of roughly hit on it, but we haven't really talked about it in detail, the central area of the station. Is this all a ventilation system, or is this where the primary command and control facilities are? And talk us through the design of this area in general.
Well, yeah, I would think that you would have the primary command area in there, and you know, on the inside and the outside of the central sphere, commanding, you know, the whole of the station. But certainly, you'd have individual ones commanding each arm, and but you know, it's a really important area because it's like the engine of your car, and which powers, you know, your air conditioning and everything. And so if you're going to hit the station, you're going to go for there, you know, but hopefully you will be repelled before you get to that central part. You know, it would be dumb. It would be dumb to have that. It would be dumb to have that on the outside of the arms, you know, the tips of the arms, you know, so keep it in the middle. And
40 miles in, or 19 miles in to the station, have your command control.
Yeah, but you know, it's really a hollow shell because of the action that we had with the chase, and you didn't see it that much in the film, but it was tricky to do a rendering. It's hard doing a rendering of an inside of a sphere because you don't get any depth. You know, so you have to put loads of detail, lights, and all kinds of stuff so you can get the depth. But it's weird because it's you're inside an ellipse, a sphere, so it's weird perspective. And so maybe they felt that way when they actually started moving around it with the camera, because they shot it really fast with the Franklin was zipping by.
And lastly, Sean, what was your favourite and least favourite thing about the Yorktown design? Is there anything you would change if you could go back?
No, I'm pretty. I would have changed the doors. Everything else, I was pretty happy with. I mean, I'm honored that, you know, that they kept it. You know, it doesn't happen often that, you know, when you do a design and it goes unchanged. And I think nowadays with the technology that we have with CG, there's no excuse really. They have to have a really big excuse to really completely radically change something, because you're giving them the models, and they did a really great job of it. And I'm very, 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 very proud of Yorktown.
All right, well, I would like to take the time to thank Mr. Hargreaves for joining us yet again today. Thank you, Sean.
You're very welcome. It was a great pleasure to be a part of your webcast. Is it webcast or web series?
Web series.
Yes.
I'm very happy to be a part of your web series.
Thank you. It's always such a kick to hear all the behind-the-scenes stuff and, get into the minds of the people that design for Trek. So hopefully we can speak with you again sometime soon.
Anytime. I'm always here. Set it up. I'm happy to come on.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. It's been a pleasure, as always, to have you again today. But that is it for today's episode. So please click that like button as well as that big red subscribe button. And we look forward to entertaining you all in the future again very, very soon.
Yes, and if you want to help us out and make future content for you all to enjoy, please consider donating by visiting Trekyards.com and clicking the donate button, or by swinging on over to Patreon and help us on a monthly basis. So until next time, that's it from us here at Trekyards. Keep on trekking, and we look forward to seeing you all again very soon.
Bye,
everybody.
Bye, guys.